What happens when you mix elite athletes with unpredictable weather and a touch of Melbourne madness? You get anecdotes so crazy they feel like fiction. From improbable triumphs to records you never heard of. Let's jump straight into the epic stats and stories of the Australian Open.
Game, stat, match.
The Australian Open isn't just a test of skill. It's a battle against the weather, your body, and therefore, Father Time. And the history books here, they are filled with absolute anomalies that defy every logic of sports science. Take Martina Hingis. In 1997, she turned the tennis world upside down by conquering Melbourne at just 16 years old. No driver's license, no graduation, just pure clinical dominance. She became the youngest Grand Slam champion of the Open era, proving that if you're good enough, you're never too young. But while Hingis represents the explosive start, Ken Rosewall represents the ultimate endurance. Rosewall pulled off a full-circle legacy that we might never see again. In 1953, he captured the title as an 18-year-old prodigy, but he didn't just leave his mark as a kid. He stayed at the top for so long that in 1972, 19 years after his first win, he hoisted the trophy again at the age of 37. When the sun goes down in Melbourne, the real show begins. The Australian Open is world famous for its electric night sessions. But did you know this tradition actually started a revolution in tennis? Back in 1988, when the tournament moved to Melbourne Park, it became the very first Grand Slam to introduce night matches under floodlights. This wasn't just a schedule change. It completely transformed the atmosphere of the sport, turning a quiet tennis match into a high-octane stadium event. But there is one man who has turned these night sessions into his personal hunting ground. Novak Djokovic. The stats are absolutely staggering. Djokovic has become virtually invincible after dark. You have to go all the way back to 2018 against Hyeon Chung, where he showed his human side. Since then, Novak is on an incredible streak of 31 consecutive night session wins in Melbourne. 31. Let that sink in.
He's a perfect 10.
Even though he suffered tough semi-final exits in 2024 and 2025, both of those happened in the day session. When those floodlights turn on, Novak is a different beast. He has now won 30 consecutive night matches on Rod Laver Arena. Some say the cooler air and the heavier ball suit his surgical style perfectly, but whatever the reason, if you're playing Djokovic at night in Melbourne, you're not just playing a man. You're playing nocturnal Nola, a force that simply refuses to lose under the lights. Let's start with a question that seems fairly easy. Who is the most successful man in the history of the Australian Open? If you said Novak Djokovic, you're only half right. While Novak is the undisputed king of the Open era with his legendary 10 singles titles, the overall record holder is a man from a different age, John Herbert, called Jack Crawford. Gentleman Jack was an absolute machine. He racked up 11 Aussie Open titles in total, 4 in singles, 4 in doubles, and 3 in mixed doubles. But here's the crazy part. Crawford and Djokovic actually share a hauntingly similar destiny. Back in 1933, Crawford was on the verge of the first ever calendar Grand Slam. He had won the Australian Open, French Open, and Wimbledon, and was leading 2-1 in the US Open final. He was 1 set away from immortality. But then, disaster struck. A massive asthma attack mid-match caused him to collapse physically, losing the final and the slam in a heartbreaking drama. You might remember that kind of plot when thinking of 2021. Do you think Nole will catch Crawford's total of 11 this year? Leave a note in the comments. But as impressive as 11 titles sounds, the women of the Australian Open are playing on a completely different level. The legendary Margaret Smith Court didn't just win here, she owned the tournament. She sits at the top of the mountain with a staggering 22 titles in Melbourne. That is exactly double the titles of the most successful man. And even when we look at the modern era, the Titans keep getting bigger. Martina Navratilova took home 12 trophies. But the most iconic Titan move of all time has to belong to Serena Williams. In 2017, Serena captured her 7th Melbourne singles title in the most dominant fashion imaginable. She didn't drop a single set the entire tournament. But the real kicker? She did all of that while she was 8 weeks pregnant. In a sport of fine margins and extreme athleticism, Serena proved that a true Titan doesn't just beat the competition, she defies nature itself. From Crawford's incredible 11-title legacy to Serena's superhuman run, these are the Titans who truly rule down under. Think the Australian Open has been at Melbourne forever, right? Think again. This tournament has one of the wildest travel histories in all of sports. In fact, it's the only Grand Slam that's actually been played in 2 different countries. Since its debut in 1905, it has bounced around like a tennis ball, staged 110 times across 5 major Australian cities, from Sydney to Perth. It even crossed the Tasman Sea to New Zealand, hosting the Elite in Christchurch in 1906 and Hastings in 1912. In its early days, the tournament was so nomadic it was even held at a zoo in Perth. But by 1972, the constant traveling had to stop. Melbourne was attracting the biggest crowds, so the tournament finally found a permanent home at the legendary Kooyong Lawn Tennis Club. But even Kooyong couldn't keep up with the tournament's massive growth forever. By the 1980s, the event had literally outgrown its capacity. So, in 1988, the Open made its boldest move yet, relocating to the brand new, state-of-the-art Flinders Park complex, now known globally as Melbourne Park. It was a gamble that paid off instantly. In just 1 year, attendance exploded by 90%, soaring from 140,000 at Kooyong to over 266,000 fans at the new venue. This move didn't just change the location, it transformed the Australian Open from a local favorite into a world-class global powerhouse. Now, if you believe tennis is only for the elite, you haven't heard the story of Mark Edmondson. In 1976, Edmondson wasn't just an underdog. He was an absolute ghost in the professional world. Ranked 212th in the world, he was so strapped for cash that he spent the weeks leading up to the tournament cleaning floors in a hospital to fund his tennis dreams. The press eventually gave him a nickname that stuck: the Janitor. He was the last man invited into the draw, only getting in because someone else pulled out at last minute. But once he stepped onto the grass at Kooyong, something clicked. Edmondson went on a giant killing spree that the world had never seen. In the semifinals, he had to face his own idol, the legendary world #1 Ken Rosewall, and he won. Then came the final, which started with a brutal 42-degree Melbourne heatwave, but quickly changed to extremely swirly conditions. Facing the defending champion and hometown hero John Newcombe, Edmondson played the match of his life. He didn't just win, he dominated the final sets to become the lowest-ranked male player to ever win a Grand Slam title. To this day, 50 years later, that record still stands. He remains the lowest-ranked man to hoist a major trophy. After the match, he didn't take a private jet, he hopped on a public tram home with the fans. That's almost as iconic as the triumph itself. If you liked the video so far, don't forget to smash the like button. If you love epic tennis milestones and crazy statistics, don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the sport's greatest moments. For you, it's just a click. For me, it means a lot more. Now, let's talk about a kind of magic I like to call SWISSardry. When you think of Swiss tennis dominance down under, one legendary name probably jumps straight to mind. But while he's a global icon, there is another Swiss star who was even more prolific in collecting Melbourne silverware. I'm talking about Martina Hingis. Hingis didn't just win, she made the Australian Open her personal playground, racking up a staggering 10 titles in total. That's 3 in singles, 5 in doubles, and 2 in mixed doubles. But it's how she did it that will sound familiar. If you've been paying attention to my earlier chapters, remember the incredible longevity of Ken Rosewall? Hingis pulled off her own version of that eternal magic. She achieved her titles across 3 different decades. Even more mind-blowing, just like the massive gap we saw with Rosewall. There were 19 years between her very first and her very last doubles title in Melbourne. It's another full-circle moment, proving that whether it's the 90s, the 2000s, or the 2010s, Martina Hingis had the secret formula for Swiss success. It's not just tennis, it's pure SWISSardry. While some Grand Slams are obsessed with tradition, the Australian Open is more focused on the future. This tournament is consistently the most tech-savvy on the calendar, acting as a high-speed laboratory for the entire sport. It all started back in 2007, when Melbourne became the first Grand Slam to officially introduce Hawkeye technology. Suddenly, players didn't have to just argue with officials. They could challenge them with millimeter precision, turning every close call into a dramatic stadium spectacle. But in 2021, the Australian Open took a massive leap that changed the game forever. They became the first Grand Slam in history to completely remove line judges from every single court, replacing them with Hawkeye Live. Think about that. No more human error, no more mid-match blowouts with officials, and no more challenges. The system tracks the ball in real time, using pre-recorded voices, including those of Australian emergency service heroes, to call or the second the ball hits the ground. While other slams like Wimbledon are only just now following suit in 2025, Melbourne has been living in the future for years. In the land down under, technology isn't just a tool, it's the heartbeat of the tournament. We've talked about the youngest and the oldest, but what about the players who simply refuse to let go of the throne? In Melbourne, longevity isn't just the next trend. It's a legendary feat that only the greatest titans can achieve. In February 2020, Novak Djokovic did something that seemed impossible in the modern era. By battling through a grueling 5-set final to win his 8th title, he became the first man in the Open era to win a Grand Slam singles title in 3 different decades. Think about that. He conquered the 2000s, dominated the 2010s, and kicked off the 2020s, still holding the trophy. This achievement puts him in a truly elite club with the man we mentioned earlier, the legendary Ken Rosewall. Rosewall was the original time traveler of tennis. By matching that 3-decade span, Novak didn't just win a tournament. He echoed one of the most unbreakable legacies in the history of the sport. While other legends like Rafael Nadal eventually matched this 3-decade feat later that same year in Paris, it was Melbourne Park that first witnessed this historic milestone in the men's game. In the land down under, time doesn't stop for Novak Djokovic. It just keeps counting his trophies. We've seen the players fight for glory, but what exactly are they taking home? In Melbourne, the silverware isn't just a prize. It's a masterpiece of technical engineering. Every single Australian Open trophy is manufactured by the experts at W.J. Sanders using 100% Australian-sourced and refined silver. These are widely considered some of the most technically challenging trophies in all of world sports. To give you an idea of the scale, it takes over 250 hours of meticulous work just to produce a single perfect reproduction of the men's singles trophy for the winner. But who are the legends behind the names on these cups? The men's trophy, the Norman Brooks Challenge Cup, is named after the first foreign winner of Wimbledon and a true pioneer who served as the president of the Lawn Tennis Association of Australia for nearly 30 years. On the women's side, they play for the Daphne Ackhurst Memorial Cup. Daphne was a homegrown superstar in the 1920s, racking up 14 total Australian titles before her life was tragically cut short at just 29 years old. When a champion lifts these trophies, they aren't just holding silver, they are holding the entire history of Australian tennis in their hands. While Melbourne Park is the happy slam for the world, for the local men, it has become a place of legendary heartbreak. We are currently witnessing the longest drought of any of the 4 Grand Slams for a homegrown male hero. As previously featured in Chapter 5, Mark Edmondson wrote a fairy tale ending to the most improbable winning story at any of the slams. It was an outstanding performance that shocked the world in 1976. But nobody thought it would be the last time an Australian man would lift that trophy on home soil for such a long time. Since Edmondson's miracle run in 1976, there have been a couple of close calls. 4 different Australian legends have fought their way to the final, only to see the trophy slip through their fingers. John Marks tried to earn a place in the Australians' heart in 1978, but lost to Vilas. Kim Warwick came within 1 match of glory in 1980, but had Brian Teacher snapping his streak. The iconic Pat Cash reached back-to-back finals in 1987 and 1988, losing 2 heart-wrenching 5-setters against Edberg and Wielander. And in 2005, former world number 1 Leighton Hewitt rode a wave of national fervor all the way to the final, only to be stopped by Marat Safin. To put this half-century wait into perspective, let's look at the other Grand Slams. Wimbledon finally saw a British king when Andy Murray broke their own 77-year drought in 2013 and doubled down in 2016. The US Open is hungry, but they've only been waiting since Andy Roddick's triumph in 2003.
3 sets to love. 6-3, 7-6, 6-3.
Even the French have a more recent memory, with Yannick Noah's iconic win in 1983. For the Aussies, the only silver lining has come from the women and the doubles specialists. Ashley Barty sent the nation into a frenzy when she finally broke the 44-year women's drought in 2022, winning the title without dropping a single set. But for the men, the search for the next conqueror continues. 50 years later, Mark Edmondson remains the last man standing, waiting for someone to finally join him in the history books. When it comes to the rulebook, the Australian Open has always been a pioneer. In 2019, they became the first Grand Slam in history to introduce a 10-point super tiebreak in the final set to ensure every match had a thrilling, definitive finish. The pressure to change the rules had been building for years, fueled by legendary marathons, most famously involving John Isner. His 70-68 finish against Nicholas Mahut in 2010 and his grueling 2018 battle with Kevin Anderson at Wimbledon sparked a global debate. Was it time to end the infinite advantage set? While other slams hesitated, Melbourne took the leap. But the transition wasn't exactly smooth for everyone. The very first match to use this new 10-point decider was a showdown between Katie Boulter and Ekaterina Makarova. At 7-4 in the tiebreak, Boulter hit a winner and went into a full celebration. She dropped her racket, pumped her fists, and headed to the net to shake hands. There was just one problem. Under the new rules, she still needed 3 more points to win. After a moment of pure confusion, she realized her mistake, got back to work, and eventually sealed the historic 10-6 victory for real. Fast forward to 2022, and the rest of the world finally caught up. Now all 4 Grand Slams have adopted this unified format, but it all started right here with a pioneer spirit and a very famous early celebration. If you've ever been to the Australian Open or watched the Happy Slam on TV, you've definitely heard the thunderous battle cry. It's the unofficial anthem of Australian sports. But did you know it actually started as a lunch call for English miners? The chant is a direct descendant of the British cheer, Augie, Augie, Augie. In the tin mines of Cornwall, Augie was slang for a Cornish pasty, a hearty meat and veg pie. Legend has it that miners' wives or pasty sellers would stand at the mine entrance and shout, "Augie, Augie, Augie," to let the workers know lunch was ready. The hungry miners would shout back, "Oi, oi, oi." So how did a shout for lunch become a roar for legends? It's believed that British sailors brought the chant to Australia during World War II. Over the decades, the Aussies took the rhythm, swapped Augie for Aussie, and turned a Cornish lunch break into a national power play. While other Grand Slams were at the mercy of the elements, the Australian Open decided to build its own shelter. In 1988, when the tournament moved to Flinders Park, it unveiled a true crown jewel, the Rod Laver Arena, then known simply as Centre Court, featuring the first ever retractable roof in Grand Slam history. At a time when no other major tournament even had a retractable roof in its plans, Melbourne went weatherproof. This revolutionary tech faced its biggest test during the 1988 women's final between Steffi Graf and Chris Evert. The match was just on the way when the heavens opened, but instead of a day-long delay, officials triggered the state-of-the-art sliding roof. After a roughly 90-minute pause, the match resumed, marking the first time in history a Grand Slam final was completed indoors. Graf adapted instantly, winning 9 straight games to take the title and launch the first leg of her legendary Golden Slam. Melbourne didn't stop there. While Wimbledon didn't debut a roof until 2009, the Australian Open added a second one in 2000 and a third in 2015. Today, it remains the only Grand Slam with 3 retractable roofs, proving that in the land down under, the show always goes on, rain, hail, or shine. We have to talk about the man who truly owns the throne. If Novak Djokovic is the king of Melbourne, then 2012 was his most brutal coronation. It was the longest Grand Slam final in the history of the sport, a soul-crushing 5 hours and 53 minutes of pure, unadulterated warfare against Rafael Nadal. This wasn't just tennis, it was a test of who would break first. They traded haymakers until the clock struck 1:37 a.m., with Djokovic finally emerging victorious in 5 grueling sets. The scoreline reads like an epic poem, 5-7, 6-4, 6-2, 6-7, 7-5. But the most iconic image didn't happen during the match, it happened after. Both men were so physically destroyed by the effort that they couldn't even stand for the trophy ceremony. Officials actually had to bring out chairs so these 2 warriors could sit down while the speeches were made. It's the ultimate testament to Novak's dominance. With a flawless 10-0 record in Australian Open finals, he has proven time and time again that when the lights are brightest and the battle is longest, he is the last titan standing. As we enter the 2026 Australian Open, we aren't just watching a tournament, we are witnessing a full-scale assault on the record books. The headline is, as always, Novak Djokovic. Sitting on 24 Grand Slam titles, one more victory here would give him his 25th major, making him the undisputed leader in tennis history, surpassing Margaret Court's all-time record. If he lifts the trophy on February 1st, he will also become the oldest man in the Open era to win a Grand Slam singles title, breaking Ken Rosewall's 54-year-old record. Oh, and if he makes it until the quarterfinals, he will have earned 103 match wins at the AO and therefore surpass Roger Federer as the current record holder. But the next gen is already rewriting the script. Defending champion Jannik Sinner is hunting for a rare Melbourne hat-trick. Only Djokovic has ever won 3 straight Australian Open titles in the Open era. Meanwhile, world number 1, Carlos Alcaraz, is on the brink of immortality. At just 22 years old, he needs only this trophy to complete his career Grand Slam, which would make him the youngest man ever to own all 4 majors. On the women's side, Iga Swiatek is also chasing the career Grand Slam. Just 5 other women in the Open era have achieved that feat. Then there's Daniil Medvedev, the master of variety. He arrived in Melbourne after winning in Brisbane, his 22nd title in 22 different cities. If he triumphs here, he reaches 23 titles without ever winning the same tournament twice. An absurd record that defies tennis logic. On the local front, the weight of a nation rests on Alex de Minaur, ranked at a career-high world number 6. He is Australia's best hope to finally end the 50-year drought since Mark Edmondson's miracle run in 1976. Can a lucky loser or a low-ranked underdog like Basaveretti or Shang pull an Edmondson and shock the world by becoming an even lower-ranked champion? History is waiting. The question isn't just who will win, it's whose name will be etched into eternity. Now, I'm curious to hear your favorite story. Which shocked you the most? Or is there any legendary Melbourne stat line that I have missed? Drop a comment below and let's get the debate started. You can also check out my recent video about the ATP event in Brisbane. You'll be surprised how many fascinating stats I could dig out for you. If you enjoyed this deep dive into tennis history, you know the drill. Follow me to stay up to date so you won't miss the next episode coming your way. Feel free to share this with friends, foes, or tennis bros. For this week, I'm